Hey guys, Thrasher here. It's November, and that means it's time for a new tier list. Before we get into it, if you haven't subscribed yet, think about hitting that button down below, and let's talk about it right now. Okay, a couple things to take note of before we actually talk about the characters in the tier list themselves. This is a sparking only tier list. There are hero and extreme units that would fit somewhere in this list. None of them would fit in Z tier. There are just far too many characters to go through them all, so this will be sparking characters only. I wouldn't worry about it too much as there are no hero or extreme units that sit in the Z tier, so it won't affect our top echelon of characters anyway. With that being said, there is one more thing to note here. All of these tiers are not ordered, so characters within a tier are randomly thrown about except for our top tier, which is Z tier. Those characters will be in order. So if you see any two characters in, say, the A tier, for example, if you see one before the other, that doesn't necessarily mean it's better than the other. That order is random. Okay, with that being said, let's get into it. The first tier is the D tier. These are units that you pretty much don't want to use. There's no reason to use these units. They don't bring any true utility to any viable team in any way. There are no situations where you would want to use these units. Next is the C tier. These are units that are not preferable in almost any situation. There are very, very rare cases where they're useful. A good example is Hercule if you're running a troll team, or Pan if for whatever reason you're running a hybrid team and you need that blue counter, say for Gogeta or something. She is possibly an option. But I wouldn't call her super viable. With that being said, if you look at this tier, it mainly consists of units who have fallen from grace now that the sidestep nerf is in action. These are units who are doing well with the sidestep because they had a lot of key regen, and now because the key regen doesn't matter as much because they can't draw cards at the speed they need to make those long combos, they've fallen out of power. Okay, the B tier. These are units that are, in my opinion, filler units. They don't have a ton of viability. One good example of a unit that's actually moved up into filler space is Pikkon. He's not an amazing unit by any stretch of the imagination, but he does have a very high synergy with Gogeta, so if you wanted to throw him onto a team and you have Gogeta, you lead out with Pikkon, let Pikkon die, and make your Gogeta much stronger. I wouldn't say that's the most viable option, but it does make Pikkon a usable character if you have the right setup. The same is true of both of the Friezas. They're not extremely powerful characters by themselves, but if you have the Extreme Zarbon and Extreme Dodoria, you could run that team. It is viable. It's not top tier, but it can work. Next up is A tier. These are quality support units. In most cases, you use these units as sort of a counterbalance. A good example of this is the red Super Saiyan Trunks. So there is actually a team now, and we'll get into these characters as we get into the higher echelon tiers, but there's a team in Hybrid Saiyans where you can run purple, purple, red. The two purple units are very powerful. They do the damage for you, but they can be countered by yellow. So red is your support counterbalance. So you bring that Trunks in to actually kill off any yellow that would try to kill your two primary units. Inside this tier, we see Dabura. He's our first new character from the most recent banner. The reason that he's sitting so low, his stats are actually good. His kit is reasonably powerful. The problem is he has pretty much no synergy. He has almost no tags, and he's a blue unit, which is pretty much the worst color typing that you can have in the current meta. Next up is S tier. These can be primary units that you use on your team. You can build teams around S tier units. The only issue is that they just don't stand out as well as the Z tier units. They don't have the kits that make them meta creating characters. They're still very powerful. You still have to pay attention, but they're just an obvious step below these top 8 characters that we're going to go through. One thing you'll notice here is that the combo of Goten and Trunks, only one of them is in this S tier, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the Z tier in a minute. And we have our second new character in Majin Buu, who is overall a very good unit. The only issue here is he's on a team in Regeneration that is not super flexible. There's not a ton of options for what you can run in comparison to the other two top meta teams. And he's a little more flimsy than I had hoped he would be. He does bring the ability to heal your team. He is reasonably tanky, but he doesn't hold up as well as I was hoping he was going to against most opponents. One of the great things about Majin Buu, though, is he does have the lock ability that Bardock has. So if you have a unit that's countering your team in some way, you can lock them in with Majin Buu and Rising Rush that character and get rid of it immediately, so that way you don't have to worry about that counter. Okay, next up is the Z tier. All of these characters are in order as opposed to all of the other tiers that we've looked at. What we're going to do now is go through these one by one, as they need a little more explanation than all of the characters in the tiers below. Okay, number 8. Super Saiyan Gotenks. He's a fantastic unit. He fits mainly on the Hybrid Saiyan team. One of the issues that he has is that his Z ability is fusion based, and there's not a full fusion team yet. That's a bit of a problem. He really only buffs himself in the current team that he will sit on. As we get more fusion units and he's paired up with Gogeta, he'll be much more powerful. Right now he's pretty much a beat stick. That's the key to his kit. That's really all he's got going for him, is a ton of ki regen that allows him to do a lot of damage. The issue is the 7 characters in front of him, the ones that are beat sticks, generally pump out more damage. And while his ki recovery is awesome, the problem is the arts card draw speed has been reduced when you sidestep, so it's not as powerful as it would have been a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So he is a great unit. He is definitely Z tier, but he is our 8th place unit. Next up, number 7 is Android 16. Android 16 is a fantastic unit. The real issue that he has right now is he's on the Android team, and the Android team has fallen pretty much out of the meta. They can't keep up with the Regeneration team, they cannot keep up with the Hybrid Saiyan team, and they absolutely cannot keep up with the Saiyan team. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but let's get back to this character. He has an absolutely phenomenal self-destructibility that will one-shot most opponents that do not have type advantage over him, and even if they do have type advantage, if they're at half health or lower, he's almost guaranteed going to kill them. He has a reasonable amount of strike damage that he can do, and he is the tankiest character in the game. His cover change ability is phenomenal in that it reduces damage by half, and then he gets half of that health back, so he has a lot of sustainability. His only real issue right now is the main team that he fits on, which is the Android team, and the only other team that you can really put him on with decent synergy is putting him on the Hybrid Saiyan team just to help out Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. The issue there is there are lots of cases where you can put other characters in that will help the whole team rather than just one character and probably give you a better buff overall. So let's move on to number 6. Number 6 is Bardock. He still has reasonably good stats for being an older character. He still has the number 1 HP stat in the game. He's reasonably tanky. He still pumps out fairly good damage, and the main thing here is he sits on a Saiyan team and he has the lock ability, so he can lock a character in and finish that character off. One of the very powerful Saiyan units right now is Gogeta, but he's a little bit of a glass cannon. He's not a full glass cannon, he can take some damage, but if you bring in a blue unit to try and counter him, that blue unit can kill him fairly easily. This Bardock is here to help stop that. You lock in the blue unit, you kill the blue unit off, it makes Gogeta immensely more powerful if you have that character, and even if you're not running Gogeta, you can lock in some other problem unit for your team with this character, making him still extremely powerful. Okay, next up, number 5 is Goten. Goten is another beat stick. He does a ton of damage, not quite as much damage as the next character, but he can absolutely tear it up through the entire match. He has very stable damage throughout. One of the key things about Goten, though, and the reason that he's so much higher than his counterpart Trunks, is there are not a lot of quality Gotens that you can run on a team to try and get the extra bonuses that Trunks gets when he is paired up with him, whereas the opposite is not true for this Goten right here. There are tons of Trunks that you can run. In fact, if you're running Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and you run this Goten right here, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan is countered by a yellow character, so you probably want to run the red Super Saiyan Trunks to counter that yellow unit, and that means that this Goten is going to get his buffs. Okay, next up, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. He is still the top damage output unit for Hybrid Saiyans and still the best anchor unit for that team and probably the second best anchor unit in the game. Beyond that, he's reasonably tanky and he has a 20 key ultimate arts card, which is extremely powerful in this sidestep nerfed meta where you can't draw many cards. You can do your 4 card combo, then you can draw the 20 key ultimate card and try to finish that unit off at the end of the combo. Okay, number 3, Itku. Itku doesn't do a ton of damage, but his kit is phenomenal. It allows you to get out of the way of a Rising Rush. It allows you to Vanishing Step multiple times in a meta where Vanishing Step is very, very valuable now because you can't sidestep to get it back. This kit is probably the most pro Vanishing Step of any kit in the game. It makes the Saiyan team absolutely amazing. If you run him alongside Bardock, you have a ton of control. You can vanish a lot with this character, and you can lock characters in with Bardock. It allows you to really follow through with whatever your specific game plan is. Then at that point, all you really need for your third unit is them to do a lot of damage. Okay, number 2, Janemba. Janemba has an absolutely amazing stat spread. He has the best stats in the game. His counter ability is awesome. His kit in general is just fantastic. In fact, it's so good, he's the second character on the tier list, even when Regeneration is not the best team in the meta, just because you can actually put him on non-Regeneration teams, and he still will be able to hold his own because he doesn't need synergies just because his stats are so good and his kit is so powerful. Similar to the way way that Itku allows you to Vanishing Step more often than you normally would be able to for the Saiyan team, this Janemba allows you to Vanishing Step more often than you would be able to with the Regeneration team. He brings a little bit of damage and he brings a lot of evasion. Okay, so number 1, and the obvious choice, Super Gogeta. As you can see here, I haven't pulled him. I'm a little sad about that. I'll probably spend more crystals. He is the number 1 damage dealer in the game and by far the best anchor in the game. If the rest of your team is dead, he is an absolute monster. I've seen him 100 to 0 a perfect cell. I've seen him 100 to 0 pretty much any character that he doesn't have type advantage against. It's absolutely insane. With his kit giving him ki back as he attacks opponents, he's ready when that combo ends to fight the next character if for whatever reason once your first 2 have died, you have more than one opponent to defeat. The only 3 major drawbacks of this character right now is he can be a little fragile. He is not a glass cannon. He can take some damage, but he cannot take as much damage as most characters up in the Z tier. The second issue is that because he's fusion based, there are not a lot of fusion options, so you have to put him on a Saiyan team. With that being said, once he's on a Saiyan team, if you're running him with Itku and Bardock, it's the best PvP team in the game right now. The third major issue is his counter is not the best counter in the game. It only works against melee, which is reasonable, but the problem is that it knocks people back and you can't start a combo out of it like you can with Janemba. With that being said, he's going to get stronger as we get more fusion characters such as Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, who's in the near future. He's going to continue to get stronger and that fusion team is going to start to build out and he's going to be powerful on multiple teams. Because he is a little less durable than most characters in the Z tier, you have to make sure that you're bringing a unit that can stop anyone that's trying to counter him. So if your opponent brings a blue character to try and kill this Gogeta off real quick, you want that Bardock on your team because the Bardock can lock in the blue unit, kill the blue unit, and if the blue unit's gone and you still have Gogeta, you're pretty much going to win. It would be very hard to lose at that point. And that's why this is an absolutely phenomenal character, and that team is the number 1 team in the game right now. And that's it for this tier list, guys. If you think I missed anything, if you think we should change anyone around in the tier list, throw it down in the comments below and let's talk about it. And if you like this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.